Thought our meeting was done already. Martha, give me a roll call.
You bet. We got Brian.
Here.
Justin.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Lexi. Here. And we're still seeing John. John is out. Yep.
You. Starting off, you'll notice there's no agenda out there for July. Nothing on it, so before you ask. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll fill it. Any questions on next week's agenda at this point?
There's gonna be a lot of stuff from tonight that I hope to get out there. For you, so it'll fill up, and so will the 22nd.
Will we get any materials from Heidi before we have
I'm
a
hoping so.
conversation? It's probably gonna be complex data. It'd be nice to have it ahead of time.
Yeah, we're
She
hoping
had
for
provided
it.
us with a few things, but she was gonna do some
Yeah.
number tweaking, so the check with her. She's on vacation this week.
That's why she couldn't be here tonight.
We're good?
Our 2 mile zone jurisdiction goes all the way out to New Melray Road.
Sure does.
Wow.
Department head discussion. Mike, you gave us a handout, so.
Oh, I thought Stacy was going first, sorry, no?
You can do it, it's fine.
Okay. Oh, not a problem.
I think she's gonna be a little more in depth, so.
Gotcha, okay, so I guess the one thing I just wanted to pass on to you guys, new Iowa laws coming into effect. Part of my monthly report, but just make sure you guys understand the fireworks law. It really doesn't affect us a whole lot because we already allowed fireworks, but new laws, 3rd and the 4th, they're allowing the fireworks to be shot off. That's the new law. Between the hours of, well, it depends, between 9 and 10 PM or on the 4th, 9 to 11, what is the state law. The other new law is the texting, or I'm sorry, the hands-free driving law. Everybody's aware of that. We've kind of put that out to everybody, and we had a lot of shares, over 300 as last I knew on our page. So we're putting it out to everybody. It's going to be a learning curve. Totally understand it. We can't write citations until January 1st of 26. Otherwise, it's all warnings, but you can be stopped for it. Just giving you guys the information. So.
You're excluded in a mobile office.
There are
If you have a
exemptions.
driver in your mobile office, yes.
That's a good one.
So I wanted to go over revising some ordinances. I'm going to be bringing forth this one right here is a parking ordinance. I'm also going to be giving you a noise ordinance revised as soon as we get some clarification on what we want to do. The issue is that it's some of it just better clarification and the ordinance is just revising and getting it up to par basically. But the parking one we have right in front of you. This is kind of in regards to a vehicle that's been parked on the street that you guys are aware of. But the first in the yellow, parking of unregistered vehicle, it's already state law. I just wanted to add it to the ordinance. It's already in effect as for state law, but like I said, I wanted to add it for our local ordinance. It's just basically unregistered vehicle, and that vehicle that we were pertaining to had it wasn't registered, so we had it. I got a hold of the owner, and he has it removed from the street as of right now. So that is being taken care of. What I also want to do with this to prevent these vehicles, as in box trucks or whatever, commercial vehicles. We don't really want them in residential areas all the time. I understand, if people are moving, box trucks moving people in and out, totally understand, Lowe's trucks, stuff like that, they're coming in and out. Totally understand that they have to go to housing, houses and drop things off. So I would like to remove the 7104 truck park it limited. And on the back side of it, add this as a new ordinance as the commercial vehicle parking, prohibited parking. And basically it broadens it a little more as in, commercial, it describes what current commercial vehicle includes, not delivery vehicles, moving trucks, vehicles, and then semis exceeding 10,000 pounds. Prohibited parking, you guys can see that too, but basically it's just saying no, none of these on on the streets pretty much at any time, other than for temporary stops of, unloading, active loading, unloading, like Amazon trucks or delivery trucks that have to come. I wanted to get your guys' opinions on the time frame of that. I put down 30 minutes. I grabbed this from an ordinance from previous cities. The other one was 15 minutes, or actually Annette got this ordinance for me. Are you good with like 30 minutes for that,
I
or?
was gonna ask a question about it, because I think somebody's moving into a house or an apartment, it's gonna be unlikely they're gonna get it unloaded
So-
in 30 minutes.
And I agree with that. And that's where exemptions at the bottom are, basically if vehicles with a valid, if you go down to the exemptions here, vehicles with valid city issued temporary parking permit or permission from either police chief or city administrator. We totally understand if people are moving in, they can leave their vehicles there or the box truck if they're trying to move.
Right.
So I mean,
That's fine.
if we see it there, we're not going to enforce it. We understand that's what they're doing. This is to prevent long-term parking of these box trucks on the streets that we currently are seeing. And to me, it's a safety issue when you're going around that corner. I think the rest of you guys can agree with me on that, that it's a safety issue to have these box trucks on the street in certain areas. Sometimes these streets are so small, they're not a normal street, where parking's only allowed on one side versus the other. They're just wider than the average truck or other vehicles.
How likely is it somebody moving into the city is gonna know they need to get a parking?
They wouldn't, but I mean, we would, if we get complaints on it,
You just go over and
we would go
the
talk.
officer would
Yes.
grant them the accept.
Correct.
They don't need to post something or?
Correct.
Okay. That's fine.
And this is one of these, we're more or less trying to prevent long-term parking on the street with these box trucks. That's what we're trying to do. When it comes to people moving in and stuff like that, we totally understand and we'll work with people on that.
Good.
That's all I got for it. What I'm gonna do is, I'm sorry.
I do want to add, though, if you're okay with that, then I can bring it Tuesday as an ordinance to set a public hearing.
I was just gonna say that, so thank you.
Okay.
Right, thanks, Gene. United Front, Singular Front, Dean, do you have anything you want to throw in before we kind of jump to Kelly Oaks?
Just want to mention a few things. Recently, we have been experiencing quite a few alarm issues, with the towers, with the wells, something I'm hard into, moving further into some, technology, hopefully some fiber or something of the sort. Probably gonna hit that pretty hard on next budget, so it's definitely something that, hopefully we can prepare for. We'll see once, and maybe it's just something that we gotta wait until Tower 3 goes up and intermingle that cost together. Justin texted me with concerns on a curb, just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I did reach out to Bart Materials. We went over there, actually scratched some material in there, it looks like possibly the paver drug. The space stone and got up in the mix, but basically it just crumbled right out of there, so. I talked to Scott Borgening with Midwest Concrete, they are gonna take care of that. One thing and I need to talk to Annette about is when that bond expires. So that we get that addressed before that takes place, but. Sometime in the near future, I was thinking it was around August or September. But we can look further into that.
Yeah, tomorrow, yep.
Yep. So, I did mention, last month that, was looking to get, Cruiser in here to do some jetting on sewers, have not got them in here yet, they must be, related to other projects going on, so still looking to get them in the near future as well. But we'll put notice out, when that happens, so that everybody's aware.
So Dean, the alarms on the wells, is the technology that we have failing or they're false alarms?
Yeah, we don't know, right now it just things up at the antennas. So we don't know if there's fault in the antenna or whatever. We're gonna, we got a tech coming tomorrow to replace an antenna. Hopefully that's all it is. Holiday weekend and stuff like that throughout the nighttime,
Right.
disturbances and stuff like that. But, that's just kind of trial and error. The technology we got is, not saying that it's totally obsolete, but it's definitely getting old.
What did Bart say about your sidewalk?
So he wanted to talk to the contractor as well. wanted to try to share the cost on that, but definitely wants to address portions of that sidewalk that are pitted pretty well, or turned pretty well. Just it's gonna be a matter of how they're gonna split the cost and how they're gonna take that upon themselves, their own hands, between Bard and.
The Spiegel Park.
So it's up here by the baseball diamonds. It's been an ongoing issue since shortly after it was poured, and their old quality control person, I shouldn't say old, I don't want to refer to it that way, but their ex has retired and actually kind of dilly-dallied around, pushed the blame off to this, that, and the other thing. Kind of extended it out to his retirement. They took core samples and stuff like that, so it came back no fault to the concrete, which yesterday talking to, and at that time, they actually told me that where they pulled the core samples, they were gonna replace that regardless. Never ever had. So it was just a matter of trying to get a hold of somebody there again, get them out to meet with me, and finally was able to make that happen yesterday morning. So, but they definitely, he wants us to continue considering concrete streets versus strictly asphalt. So they're definitely leaning toward getting something done with it.
Good.
Thanks, Dean. Stacy.
All right, before we get to Kelly Oaks, I just have a couple or one stuff to touch on. Last meeting, we had talked about the leaky roof. And I didn't have a ton of answers for you as far as where we were at, if it was completely fixed. I believe they got the majority of them, with the exception of the west wall. So up on the track where like those diamond windows are, it's coming in, they are pretty persistent that it's not them, and they think that there's a possibility that it is some spider cracks on the outside of the building. I don't know if you recall back a couple years ago, when we had the same issue on the south edge of the community center. We got them filled, and I can't necessarily say caulked, but filled, and it did solve the problem, so I can't say. So I did bring them out, met with him yesterday. He sent me a quote today for 1,900 to come and like do all this, filling all the spider cracks within the wall on the west side exterior of the building. So pending any other comments from you guys, that's where we're gonna go for and see if that was our issue or not. Based on it being the issue on the south side, there's a chance. There's also a chance it's not, but regardless, spider cracks probably should be filled anyway, so.
I mean, I think that's the way to go. I mean, trial and error.
How much extra would they charge to re-caulk the windows? Considering they're gonna be here already.
I don't know. It's definitely coming in above the windows though. I mean, not to say they can't recaulk the windows anyway, but. I know when they did the recaulking of all the joints, I believe they did the windows at that point, all the joints still look awesome from the outside. When they did it years ago at this point, all the caulking was like the split, like cracking, whatever, it all looks really good still. So I don't know if the window caulks up there look the same, obviously can't see it from ground level, but I can ask. So that's my ACC.
Yep.
My update. Which brings us to Kelly Oaks. We talked about it a little bit, I think, last work session. And as I think we talk more about it in the parks meeting, and whatnot, I think the consensus there is that we would 100% like to move forward, with the bidding process so that these, so if you want to pull that one up first, I guess rewind a little bit for how much money we have within Kelly Oaks right now. So within the account right now is the 151. It is a little more because some interest money was added today. But for all intents and purposes, this is close. So we have that. The 35,000 is just a guesstimate for expenses we have out there. I did signs, trees, garbage. Disc golf's gonna be 1,500, just miscellaneous expenses. I wanted to kind of err on the side of caution. Which brings us to the 116. I did, with the swap funds, I have to submit reporting quarterly. Our last one, this is what I submitted, so we're just waiting for payment from Dubuque. For the 77,000, so we should have that in the account semi soon. I have talked to Ed again to find out exactly when. What puts us at the 193. And then the stuff below it is just either grant money or the transfer the city was already gonna make. So we would have 199 remaining from swap funds. We did receive that REAP grant that we'll get funding for once we proceed with the pavilion, and then the $100,000 transfer the city has been making on an annual basis, which is where we get the 567,970. So that's kind of where we're sitting now. And then I think the next one she's gonna pull up is kind of a picture. I have to squint. Of this is worst case scenario. So if the pavilion costs 980, if the parking lot costs 185, Macoken Valley, that is a quote from them. However, it's last year's quote, so possible that number changes a little bit. I think it's kind of where MSA comes in terms of if we do parking lot version, the quote Jake gave us for the contract we'd have to sign with them is 11.5. The 185 is purely a Dean guesstimate, close guesstimate. So that's how much, and there's some like miscellaneous costs, but for the most part, that is what worst case scenario, if everything put out to bid came back as quoted or as guesstimated. The grant money is what I talked about on the previous one. That's the total there. City Peosta money is the total we had in the account with the 77 from ARPA once we get it. I think that's in the first one. And then the $100,000 transfer. So anyway, long story short, the amounts in the far right are the amounts we would need. And again, worst case scenario, everything came back as quoted for Kelly Oaks Park. So I don't know. I mean, I think the discussion here is if we move forward with this, the bidding process, they said they thought we put it up to bid end of August, I want to say. If at that point we get those bids back, the willingness to say we're gonna find the money to make it worth essentially going out. Just to make sure we're all on the same page and we're not, it's good to have the numbers. I guess we're kind of torn, I'd say, as a park committee. I am very reluctant to just go out to bid and be like, we're this short and where are we gonna get the money without some type of notification beforehand, some type of, maybe not full commitment, but semi-commitment to say we'll do what we can to find the funds. So yeah, so that is hopefully worst case scenario numbers. As far as the 621, so a couple questions, like I think Marcy can take over here in a second when she was looking at. I mean, the first question is would we just be looking at just the pavilion first and then worry about parking lot later? Would we want to knock them both out and be done? And where we stand at that? And then we can kind of take it for as far as if we did do this, where would some of the funds come from, essentially internally?
Let me jump in.
Yep.
If we did them in separate, the pavilion and the parking lot, would that eliminate the possibility of using either the swap funds or grants towards the parking lot? 'Cause that's gonna push that out to 27.
Yeah, so the ARPA, swap funds, Ed has been good about, so we essentially allocated certain amount of money to certain projects. He's been good about being able to change projects to be able to do it. So we theoretically could put it all towards the pavilion, since the pavilion came in so much more than what we had asked to be accounting for.
Okay.
It would just mean that we have zero matching, funds, which essentially we wouldn't have.
Yeah, one way or another.
But no, so technically no. As a part of the pavilion, they do have to pave one handicap parking spot, he said. So I'm not sure how that works, and maybe you can say with more, maybe you can some more. As far as how one spot would work without doing the whole thing, or I don't know.
They'd probably poured that way anyway. We would imagine that handicap spot would be poured with the sidewalk, so.
I guess my recommendation, if that's something that's gonna be considered, we just put a thin layer of asphalt down, maybe 2 inches of asphalt down, with no curb and gutter. With future recognition that we would have to put curb and gutter and a final lift of asphalt on. We probably knock that cost down, a parking lot cost down to probably 40,000,
Do you say 240,000 or by 40,000?
down to 40,000.
Then it
40,
makes sense to do it
50,000.
all at once. If we would really do that, then maybe we go the asphalt route, just do the whole thing at once.
I think the important thing to remember is that we really need to get those bid numbers back to see where we're
Yeah.
at. We don't have to
Yeah.
accept the bids. But I think the environment that we're in right now, I'm hoping that there's gonna be some hungry contractors out there. Maybe Jim can speak to that a little bit more. Are things coming in under bid? Are you seeing people really hungry for the work?
I would lean towards Jake for that question.
Okay,
So I know when he emailed us as a part of that, he said it was a competitive bidding market right now. Talking to Trisha from ECIA, who is working with different cities, different projects, she had said the same thing, that the last two bids she saw cities go out for came in drastically under what they were quoted as. It's not to say it will, I'm just saying
right.
it has.
Well, we didn't wanna, I mean, I know we can decline the bid, but I
Yep.
think Parks Committee didn't really wanna go out to bid if we didn't have a feasible finance.
Correct.
So then we learned, I'm trying to recap this, that if we waited to bond for it, it's a long ways in the future. So do we have the bandwidth as a city for an internal loan
Take.
or the balance sheet for a commercial loan?
We're getting to that.
Yeah.
Like you got, like you're setting them up for that. Boy,
And
you're
ours
playing.
nice lead in.
Oh,
Yes.
I mean, which question are we answering first? Cause I feel like they have to be answered at the same time.
Yes. So I kind of put together, Heidi's on vacation, so I don't know enough about internal loans and how they impact different things. So I just kind of put together some numbers. This is obviously last year, so this is where we're starting with these funds this year. This is what we've budgeted for revenue for this year, and the Kelly Oaks one includes the REAP and the grant money that Stacy mentioned. And then here's what we have for transfers out of money that we've already quote unquote committed to other places. This would include 100,000 to Kelly Oaks, 50,000 to general, and 75 for road use reserves. Which leaves us with an ending balance. I just kind of don't want to really necessarily take loss down to zero at the end of the year. So I just kind of have a, what do we want our year end goal to be to leave there aside? And this is what's left. Kind of the same with franchise fees. This is what we have budgeted. These are funds that are going to the existing seat into Kelly Oaks Trail, plus some money to set aside into some other reserve accounts like we've been doing. So that leaves us actually, if we want to have a year-end goal, a little negative. Hotel motel, again, don't have anything, we didn't set anything aside or budget to use this for any particular thing. And then the Kelly Oaks. So this is gonna be similar to what Stacy's numbers were. And then I kind of just played around with it a little bit also to kind of like the ifs and buts. So I feel like on this franchise fees, we budgeted 164. If we do move forward with doing an increase on across the board at 3% on all three, if we triple what we had last year, we would be looking at about 200,000 or a little over. Now it should probably be a little bit less because it was going to take a little time for us to get those. Even still, I think we could be counting on 180 maybe. We were a little bit lower than the 40,000 we budgeted, so I lowered this to be a little bit more realistic. From here, this year, we did not end up transferring for fiscal year 25. We had some money budgeted to transfer over to general, but the general fund felt good, and so we didn't end up doing it, so we may be able to forego that. I still do want to put that money aside for the road use because we have roads. And then here I took out, hypothetically, if we didn't do the trail, if you decided, no, let's put that money towards the pavilion and the parking lot instead of the trail, and then work on the trail for the following year, we would have more funds available. So it comes down to basically, if you move everything on over, here's where we would be. Stacy made a note that the park org does estimate that the bid may come in 200. If that does, then by golly, we potentially have money for the trail then also. This means though that we have to increase the franchise fees. We have to not transfer the 50 for general or the 175 for the trail. But again, all these are just very liquid numbers. I don't necessarily think we wanna like totally 100% commit, yes, we're gonna do this, there's always things that can come up, but I feel like we could potentially not need to necessarily take out a loan. We don't have like all these funds now, right? So these are funds that are gonna be coming in, so I talked to Stacy a little, and I said, well, we could kind of look at like what that looks like over the course of the next 6 months. If we start construction in September, they're only gonna have a little bit of the work done, we're gonna have money to, you know, put that aside, and then we're gonna continue to get those revenues coming in through spring. And I mean, we have enough money in our bank account to cover those, and if the fund needs to go a little negative before we do the transfers over, I think. Okay, but I'd want to kind of do like a running estimate of how much do we think we're gonna need to pay out, you know, to the contractors, how much is gonna get done before the end of the year. And then obviously, I mean, I don't know what that looks like if they start still, this fall, say September, October, how far do they get done? And does the road even happen in FY 26, or not the road, the parking lot and the trail for that matter? So, I mean, there is some room there. I just don't want to talk to Heidi and say, hey, what are your thoughts? Like, we get that far and, you know, there isn't enough for the trail, or there isn't enough for something, or something else were to come up, you know, what are her thoughts on the internal loans? We don't really have any internal loans that we've ever had in the past before myself, and I think before Net. So,
Yeah.
there is some money there that could be redistributed to
Repurposed.
make it repurposed, thank you, to potentially
Educate me
make
a
that
little
happen.
bit, how much flows in to lost in a year? Is it, it's a 500,000, 600,000?
315 is what we estimated,
That's the
was what we
year?
budgeted for the whole
Okay.
year, yes.
Just talk me through the logic on preserving the whole 100,000. Is it, I mean, what are we preserving? How much of a percentage of that incoming revenue stream do we need to preserve? What are we preserving it for? If we are, I mean, because it's a reoccurring thing as long as
Right.
commerce continues in town. When they don't.
For
change the law
emergency
on the
situations, I mean, if we have something that comes up.
Street,
Correct.
can't remember all the things that qualify for spending under.
Yeah,
law.
Lost, you could use
That's why I'm
lost
asking.
for anything.
Yeah, that's
I mean-
pretty much just run into general fund and you can use it for
I
anything.
just like to have little in the savings, but I mean, it could be 50, I mean, it could be.
Well, that's why I'm asking, like, how conservative do we need to be on some of these? What are we protecting?
That's a good Heidi question too.
Because
which-
the alternative is we're conservative here and then we're borrowing, and then we're paying interest, so
Right,
I'd rather, especially with continuous streams of revenue, it's like, that's kind of what it was supposed to be used for.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be overly conservative and end up borrowing.
agreed, and I feel like we would potentially be okay, even if we took that down to 0, you know, we're gonna start really building that back up.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
it keeps coming.
That's kind of why the question mark is there, I don't really know year over year.
And Annette, our primary uses right now lost, we're using it for parks.
They are.
So, like, we've said parks is our number one priority for that stream of funding.
I think franchise fees more so, cause like in my,
Well,
you know, we're
yeah.
trying to put some money around. We've kind of changed it over the years too, right, Annette? To say, hey, you know, Kelly Oaks Park was $100,000, this is the 5th year, 6th year? And this is the last year, this is supposed to be the earmark the last year.
done.
Prior to that, it was paying for the police station, it was $100,000.
Sure.
So, you know, going forward, that's.
So that was
100
200,000 right there, taken out.
Right, so that's so that 100,000 commitment is only through FY 27, if you
Completed.
decide, hey, let's keep doing that and let's use that the following year, then.
So I guess my opinion on the trail, we appreciate what other people think, but I feel like we need to have the sidewalk trail to the park when the park is completed. I see it as kind of a whole package thing. Well, I have a beautiful park and people can't get there on foot or bike. So that's my opinion. I want to put those things together and really push ourselves to figure out how to fund the whole thing, not stage it. I mean, it's not gonna get less expensive, so, but then we're dealing with it in 27 and we've missed a park season, you know, where people can't use their park. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Right, just by adjusting those two numbers like she did, we're in really good shape.
It changes to
That's what I
from, you know, down
Cut it in half.
from 100, yeah, split them in half and now we're better, so that if this does come back, you know, it
We have
really
something
kind of comes down to those bids, but I think that it's doable to find a way.
And I think our safety net is still, there's still safer.
It seems like
The
there's plenty of
sidewalk in the
safety net
parking
there.
lot.
Well, I mean, we could still do an internal loan.
We could,
We don't have
We
to
could
go
loan
out
money
for
to
that
ourselves.
financing and finance it at 7%.
well, that's a good answer.
I know that, like, so for instance, Pat Simon Drive, that was the last internal loan, and we paid like $80,000 a year over. And we took the money out of sewer initially out of the sewer fund, paved the road and then paid it back over the course of 5 years or whatever it was. So something like that would be what we would be looking at potentially. But again, I need to go back and Heidi, is that okay with everything that's coming up down the pipeline and the water and sewer side of things? Like,
What kind of interest do we have to charge ourselves
Nothing,
on our own money?
you know,
nothing.
So it's really a fund reallocation.
And if we were in a better position, we could say it could be forgivable. But I would rather put that back and, you know, fund it back up to the level it was at.
and the Pat Simon internal loan we did was tipped.
Oh.
So it was paid back by tip. So, you know, there's definitely options. I'm sure there's gonna be a little bit of an expense if you tip versus just a straight paying it back.
The problem with TIF in trying to do this now is that the project is it's already
Right.
underway.
Yeah, it's
So you really
extra
can't
time and
justify.
expense to get it going, yeah. For a small amount, and when we don't even know what that amount is gonna be,
Yeah.
so. I think, yeah, and again, I just wanna run that by Heidi because I don't know the ins and outs of, no, you don't have enough in your sewer to be able to take a, you know, loan against it because you need to have X amount in there and, you know, with everything else that we have coming down the pipeline, so. I think it's doable, I feel like.
That's kind of whispering over here to Dean, but I mean, as far as trying to do both of them, is it possible, maybe this is a you question, to bid the parking lot and the sidewalk together, but have like the sidewalk as an add-on that we could choose to do the pavilion and not, or, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
like,
you
is
could
that
do it as an alternate.
alternate,
Yeah.
and then make that choice? Does that change engineering fees? I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be minimal. I don't know if Jake's still on, that's
Yes.
his costs.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so one clarification, the fees that we were talking about when we were adding the parking lot to MGA's bid package, the 11,500, that was estimated fee, and that was just for the increased scope on Amendment 4 that we already have under contract. So Amendment 4 added site civil, basically working with MGA on the building project, doing the grading and getting everything graded and getting all that site civil stuff, water service, sewer service stuff figured out with MGA on the building. That was amendment was $6,900 estimated fee. To add the parking lot, I estimate that will bump that up to 6,900. So it was not 11,500 additional, just to clarify. That would just revise the estimated fee in Amendment 4.
Okay.
Is what I was saying. And then there was a question about the bid environment.
Yep.
All of our civil stuff, I'm not seeing a whole lot of work out there, and I've seen a pretty competitive bid of environment similar to last year. However, I can't really speak to the building side of things. I'm not sure how much work for the building trades and stuff that MGA is seeing out there.
And what about alternates, Jake?
So that was the idea, to separate out the parking lot and the extension from Bird's Road up to Kelly Oaks, that trail. That was to include that as one bid package separate from the building bidding. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think we're throwing that around. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
that's certainly,
Two separate
Pavilion,
elements.
parking lot, trail, all together, pieces individually.
yeah, that's very doable. It's when there's a clear delineation like that with the trail, it's easy to do it as an alternate, and you just have separate quantities and units for those alternates, and it's easy to see what that cost is, and you set up the bidding package so they understand that it may or may not be awarded. We'll just have to coordinate that with MGA if you want to bid everything together. I mean, I see advantages to separating out the parking lot and the trail construction, because you're not because that is probably going to be a different contractor than who's going to GC that building. But I also see some advantages to keeping everything under one GC. So then we don't have to be in the middle trying to coordinate between the building contractor and who's doing the parking lot and trying to make sure that the timelines work out, or if a parking lot gets in there first and something gets damaged, then we got a bunch of finger pointing between different contractors. So I see advantages and disadvantages on both sides. I don't see a perfect solution for it, but we can definitely do it. We can definitely do it all in the MGA bid package, have the parking lot and the trail extension. Or we could have a separate bid package for the parking lot and the trail. I mean, it probably makes a lot of sense to have the parking lot in MGA's bid package if you think you're going to do it. Because then that building GC is responsible for coordinating in that. And we don't have a contractor that's, in a hurry to get in there and get the parking lot paved, but the building contractor isn't ready for it yet and doesn't want to have to deal with driving around it or potentially damaging it. And the trail, I know we did let me look. I know we did an alignment, but I don't remember. I think there's a very slim chance we're going to get any easements for that, correct?
Yeah, we're not supposed to stay in the right away.
The trail extension.
They have to get temporary easements just for grading purposes.
Yeah. Okay.
It will from the school, Seton,
The school.
but I
Not
have.
the property owners.
Right, no, there shouldn't be any property owners there, it's just all Seton. Right, yeah, I spoke to, the principal over there and he
They'll be
felt.
fine.
Isn't there a house right by
Hmm,
entrance?
There might be,
There's.
He's got two properties, maybe.
Yeah.
Two properties. Close.
I thought originally we talked about the Seton portion of it getting out of the right of way.
Let me look at what we submitted. I wasn't prepared
If Seton
for
would be
that.
willing to work with us on that part of it.
I don't think there's gonna be any issues with that at all.
No, they're gonna see it as safety.
It'll give us more room for snow removal.
For sure.
I'm opening it now. I know we worked up an alignment and I think we had it behind the right of way across the Seton property, and then we shifted it out in the right of way once we got to those private properties further north.
That's the way I remember it, Jake.
Let me double check. Yeah, that is how we had it. So we'll have to. And I don't know, it looks like some of that the first property on the south, the Redmonds, I don't know if that's still who's there. It looks like they got some arborvitae or something along just inside the right of way. So I'm guessing they're probably not going to give us a temporary easement for grading. So we'll probably have to try to daylight that thing about it the right of way. But yeah, so we got a solid concept and an estimate for that.
I guess a question that came into my head, not money wise, but we were talking about putting out to bid the end of August. Is there a reason end of August?
So I just reached out to MGA, I think Dean reached out to MSA, just to say theoretically, hey, if I said, yes, let's go bid. That was his timeline. That's when he told me as soon as he could get a bid ready to be put out was
Okay.
end of August. So there was no the earliest he could do was that. So that was the only reason that date was, and I don't know how long that date will hold. I mean, obviously, as we push it,
Yep,
they could be pushed, but yeah, so it was just purely
okay,
if we got to go ahead, if we know people are on board, what are next steps? What does this look like? And that's what it looked like at that time.
other questions? Any other questions, discussion wise? All right, so we need permission to go ahead to bid. And straw poll.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of nods, yes.
Yes.
Or yes.
Okay.
And how do you want the bid after that discussion?
Altogether or
I would-
alternates?
Do the pavilion and the parking lot together and the sidewalk as an alternate. You can do it as both, can't you, Jake?
One big project.
We could do it as an alternate and then separate it out later. Cause the trail itself doesn't necessarily need to be coordinated with anybody else.
He was off for a second there.
I'm back, sorry.
Nebraska's Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
Can we send that out to bid both ways? The parking lot with the alternate with the trail? And the building as one and then just the trail itself? I don't know which way would be better.
I mean, if you think you're gonna do the parking lot, I mean, I think I would lean towards just including it in the building project with MGA. Cause they're already under contract to do that bidding. And it doesn't matter to them, if it's included, cause all we do is provide them a few site civil sheets with quantities and SUDAS items, and they just throw those in there and it's all lump sum. So it doesn't matter to them. That would save you guys, some bidding services. And then the biggest advantage I see of that is then that building GC has to coordinate the parking lot. So you don't have a parking lot contractor that wants to get in there and pave, but the building guy's dragging his feet because he's not quite ready, or it gets paved and the building guy gets in there and potentially damages stuff. I mean, that's my two main concerns. If the parking lot is not bid with the building, would be if the timeframes don't match up. If we have concurrent projects, if the timeframes don't match up, or if the parking lot goes in first and something gets damaged.
Feel that it's justifiable, Jake, to the markup that the GC is gonna have on it though? He's gonna put probably 15 to 20% on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you. That would be a better question for MGA and what they would anticipate the markup. I couldn't say for sure what I would expect that markup to be. If the city wants to avoid it, we can definitely get a bid package finalized. That includes the parking lot and has that Cox Springs trail extension as an alternate or part of the base, however the city wants to do it.
You have any
I mean,
thoughts, Dean?
Was that your question?
I know, I
I can
had
tell.
one too.
Yeah.
We can control it by start dates
I was gonna, yeah, can we do that?
and then
But that's
penalize the building if they're not done on time.
Or completions.
Well, I assume the buildings, they're gonna give them all next year, right? Probably to the fall, into the fall to get that thing done.
So
Depending on start date.
yeah, when he got back to me, he thought they could technically start building this year, build into the fall, then take obviously.
Spring.
Yeah, we can start again in the spring, but yeah, I mean. We didn't talk main details.
They have an 8% GC fee in MGA's pavilion construction estimate.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember that was a little higher the first time we talked to them until we tried to push on conservatism in
Correct.
their numbers.
I don't think we do.
I don't think we do.
So we have a yes,
Question
but-
answered on,
what?
so I think we need MGA to answer those questions. on
Okay.
it.
I mean, quite honestly, the contractor got the foundation in the fall yet.
Put the first lift on and then just put the final on after. that.
No, I'm talking about the building itself. If the contractor got the foundation in. I mean, most contractors will work throughout the winter, permitting, I mean, there might be days where they pull off, but. Their main focus is getting closed up, so they have some internal work, so. I wouldn't necessarily think that it would take. The entire summer of 26. I would say more realistic. To say the end of July. Easily completed, depending on the winter.
Grand opening on Peosta Days, 2026, old events there. There's some-
So how quickly do we think we can get answers back from MGA?
It's a holiday weekend, right? Like that's my only whatever, he's been great about getting answers back
Okay.
to me. But I don't know if he's
Next week.
working tomorrow. But yeah, so I would say early next week.
Right, Tuesday. What
Do you think we could have,
What do you need? Yeah.
By the
By
council meeting?
Tuesday? Yeah.
As long as it's not on vacation.
okay,
I do.
then we can just add that as an agenda item.
So the biggest question is like
Okay.
how they would put it in or
You got that,
the
Marcia?
way, like, I guess what's the question we're trying to answer, just the right format to bid, essentially.
Yes. Should the parking lot be included, and what would
With
be the
the
markup
building.
of the general contractor?
And maybe reconfirm with him his timeline assumptions of what's possible.
And if you get that information for some crazy reason tomorrow, feel free to send it out to everybody.
Awesome.
So there was a question. So you're gonna reach out to Mike with
Yep.
MGA about if he would recommend including the parking lot with the building or doing it as a separate bid package.
Correct.
And then you were gonna double check with him that if the city proceeds with the pavilion and gives them notification this month, what they were looking at for a construction completion.
Correct. A timeline of the whole thing, but yes.
And then if we separate out the parking lot and or the trail extension from the building project, are we wanting to have overlapping construction schedules? Or are we wanting to completely avoid that?
How do you think it'd take them to grade and pave the
Should be pretty minor.
school
with
side, couple
Yeah.
weeks?
all the trail.
But they could work on that and then
Couple
do the
weeks.
parking lot when they're done. There'd be a little overlap, Jake, probably a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Start on the trip.
I just didn't know if we're talking about having a grand opening
No,
on
it's
Piazza
just a
days
date.
for the
It's a
pavilion,
date.
you want,
Yeah,
you want the
that's-
parking lot in, right?
It'd be awesome.
Get it done, get it on the timeline.
It is.
And we can accommodate, we can accommodate whatever time frame we can bid it out there, but I mean, the more restrictions we have on the contractor, the less flexibility, the shorter the construction time frame that, depending on the bidding environment, it's gonna cost you.
Number most of all.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have some answers Tuesdays. We can make some decisions and then move forward.
Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy, for that work on the fund creativity.
Next up, we have franchise fee increasing from 1% to 3% discussion. I think when we first had this discussion, the concern was equal amounts for all residents. And at that time, Peosta Valley was at a capped rate of 1%. After discussions with Peosta Valley, and that was able to have them agree to meet the 3%, so we would have all citizens, all customers in the Peosta area at the same franchise fee.
So with that being said, there's a tremendous amount of information that I put out there. I tried, I got how many customers this affects, commercial, industrial, residential, what we're collecting from them now, what we would be collecting from them at the 3%, when these funds are received. Again, I just got an email from Jeremy Riker this morning saying he's ready to sign the agreement. Alliant has been very supportive, as well as Black Hills. So what we would do is start the process all over again. Tuesday, we would set a public hearing, hold a public hearing at the end of July, and then start the 3 readings.
I think everyone was on board when we first discussed this. Is there any?
I think as long as we can move forward.
Yeah, that answered my question, as long as we're treating everybody the same.
Everyone's
That was
equal.
the main concern I had.
Yep.
And I think we're within the realm of comparability with the other communities around us, so
We
I
are.
don't feel like we're out of line.
And I did put my bills out there to kind of show you how it would affect, and it's pennies on the dollar. But again, it's all based on consumption. And when you're not home.
Just, what was, those 2 documents that you put out there didn't open on my thing, I don't know.
Mine
What was it
didn't.
roughly for you? Cause
$1.70 for Black Hills and $2.34 for a month.
a month,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
$4 or $5 a
Right.
month.
But again, it's all based on consumption, so the
Right,
hotter the weather, the more you're gonna use, the colder the weather,
right,
the same,
then you're using gas.
Yeah.
right?
All right, well, I think we move forward and have this on.
I've got all the documents ready to put out
So
there.
we'll,
Yep.
we'll start with that and on Tuesday.
Yes.
Get the public hearing set up
Mhm.
and move forward.
Perfect. Great.
Recreational vehicles, golf carts. I will admit that I thought we already had restricted golf carts, and I had told several people in town that they could not drive their golf carts on streets. It's a little confusing because we default to the state code because we don't have it.
Because we didn't mention
It's a little confusing about how you can use your golf cart, you just can't use it on the main streets, basically.
Right,
direct crossing.
exactly.
Um,
There were a couple of attempts back in 2020 to prohibit them, and then back in 2022, and they just kind of fell apart. So not by anybody's fault.
Didn't get pursued.
Yeah, 2022 was the ATV, UTV, and at that time, the people that were sitting around the council didn't want to deal with it. So that's why it defaults back to the state code, which is, it would be impossible to enforce. It would drive Mike nuts. It would drive all of his.
Oh, well, in that
officers
case. No, I think it is definitely something I would like to see in the code. I think the safety aspect of what could happen, golf cart versus vehicle. And I, again, will share the story that I had a woman in my neighborhood driving down the street on her golf cart, holding her baby with 2 small children alongside of her and a 3rd or 4th small child in the basket behind her. And if somebody came out of the street and didn't see her or whatever, that could have been a really, really bad accident. So if anyone's got any reason not to add this to our ordinances, I'd entertain them.
I don't know that I have any reason not to add it. I lean into the safety things. I think I see all those things. There's part of me that doesn't want to be paternalistic to people. We have slow speeds on our streets. The only question I've got is the communities around us that are allowing golf carts. What is their experience? Dyersville, Farley, Epworth.
There's
probably
doesn't have golf carts on the street. They're not permitted. Farley does, Epworth
Asbury
does.
does not. Only
Asbury does
the
not.
Closer you get to the
Right.
meadows, you do. You can, if you live
It's
across
just
the
that
street, you can-
subdivision by the meadows.
Streets over there in
No.
Asbury, though, just out past the golf course. Well, I think we're more comparable in my mind to Dyersville because that's where we're gonna end up in terms of population, so. I mean, but I'm Wonder what other people think. I know we'll have a few people here at the.
So I know what
local
law
law
enforcement believes in them, you know, golf carts believe they should be on golf courses, essentially. They're not made for road use, essentially. I think it'd be a nightmare to enforce, as in if you made it strictly a certain intersection or whatever they'd be on, they're gonna go on it regardless. I think it's, you know what I mean? They're gonna go on it. Same as Russ's opinion on seeing kids, like I've talked to Farley, I've talked to Epworth. The big thing is young kids driving them, alcohol, open containers, and say grandma and grandpa taking their kids out. That's what I've heard from local law enforcement on.
Okay.
The rationale, I think, says it clear enough.
A few people asking what their members of Thunder Hill. They just want to be able to drive their.
Sure.
I understand.
Which I understand.
That's not incorporated.
They want to get from in town.
What is
They want to
our-
get in town. They
what are
don't
we
want
gonna
a
do
Storage fee for their car.
If we ever annex,
Thunder Hills or
Thunder
Thunder
Hills.
Ridge,
We can adjust at that point.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that.
and we could adjust it for specific neighborhoods, couldn't we, at that point, versus
Yeah.
where the core city traffic
Yes.
is.
Yep.
At that time, I think for obvious reasons.
right now they're allowed on county roads, right?
Really? By state.
So I mean, if you're even thinking about doing it, I would restrict it to off the main arteries of Peosta, if you were gonna keep them in the subdivisions, if you were going to do it. As in not Birds, not Piazza Street, not Cox Springs, keep it off the main
That's
arteries.
the way the state
I
code is
assume
right
that's
now.
what the state recommends.
Right, and keep it that way, I'm saying.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That, yeah.
I don't think we want to go for top wider than what the state is.
Because
Like,
we'll
we want to do it.
You said you've had issues with people driving on trail.
Yes, we've had multiple reports of it.
I don't like the fact they don't have doors. I mean, I just.
They have no
brake
safety
light,
equipment.
No safety equipment, no brake lights, no turn signals.
What's the max, what's their max speed, 15 miles an hour?
It depends on the,
They're just not designed for street
it
use.
depends on the card.
Yeah. I don't care either way.
If you're okay with it,
guess I got a
we'll move it. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that contractor that we use to jet our sewer lines, I know
They would be exempt.
travel.
Commercial use.
Okay.
It's same for us. If we use a golf cart during a
Like
parade.
a race or
event,
something, some
yeah,
kind of event,
we're exempt.
if Stace needs to use one, she can for those.
Like they apply for a
Maybe
special
exempt or-
permit for a special permitted purpose.
It would just be exempt for city use or for utilities.
And that's what I was asking, now, they would have to.
People can use them on their private property. I would assume. No, my driveway's not big enough.
Like quarter acre lots.
It's a little,
Dirt track around that thing.
little grandson.
We can trailer our golf
Not
carts
even
to
here.
Yeah,
People just-
well, I'll go all the way to Jeff's, we'll just, if we get the other neighbors involved, we'll just make a whole little path back
Right
there.
down through the yards. I'm thinking more like the church, and some of the other things that go up, if they wanna use a golf cart to bring people in on a parking lot, or what do we develop in the future, some vendor with a bigger parking lot or an area, or we have they host a special tent event or something somewhere. That was the reason I was asking that question. My driveway's not big enough, so.
Says you.
My garage
This
my garage is not big enough.
Just wanna trailer mine over.
Yep. Right, well, we're gonna go ahead and have this on Tuesday's agenda, set the public hearing.
No, we're having a public.
We have
We're having a
public
public hearing, that's right, we did set that. That's last meeting.
Yes,
So we'll be having the public hearing on Tuesday.
correct.
All right. Code of ordinance cell towers.
I've had a couple of calls, AT&T, Verizon, wanting to put these in residential areas. I don't think it's a good idea. They do devalue property. I'd like to limit that to the A1, M1, and M2 sections in our zoning code, to be able to restrict it. I've got one in my backyard. It's not really attractive. Again, that's just food for thought. During the public hearing process, obviously, we'll get feedback from anybody that is wanting it, because it probably could be very lucrative.
So we think they're probably talking to residents about
I know that
places
they're
they
going
would
to
put.
talk to one for sure. The other one didn't know what the process was, if there was an application fee, what ordinance we had in place. So that's why I'm bringing it before you. And then we'll actually have this at planning and zoning, so this will come before you Monday. they'll make the recommendation. I kind of wanted to catch it on both sides because it's really gonna be
So,
affecting.
Trying to look at where our ag and our M are.
Just, yeah, the A1 right now is all Joel Callahan's property. The M1, M2 is the industrial park, so if we have a future industrial park, we can do that. Right, we can do it where the new or where our new water tower area is going.
I don't think I'd want it in A1.
A what?
I don't think I'd want it in A1.
Okay, it's in the, again, this is up for discussion, but the property that
Cause I think
one of the vendors.
some of the
looking
A
at is-
stuff, we're gonna change to residential at
Property.
some point.
Yeah.
And then you got a tower in the middle.
Tower line, so.
Yeah, cause everything that comes in A1.
A1,
So every time we rezone something, it could possibly jump on it before you get a chance to do anything.
so it's totally up to you.
So I'd
And
take
then
A1
we're
out.
behind-
then we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I'd take A1 out.
I
Personally.
I agree with that. So M would just be our industrial
Correct.
base in any future industrial spots or what.
Out in the outer ring.
Mhm.
In a environment that doesn't matter quite as much.
Okay, so with your permission, we'll move that to Tuesday to set a public hearing.
Yeah.
And it'll go before planning and zoning Monday, so they'll have a recommendation for you Tuesday on what they feel. They may have a totally different perspective on it. And want to eliminate it completely, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Yeah. Have to be open.
Right place. We don't necessarily know how technology is gonna change in the future, so I don't think we wanna shut down the ability to have some of those things within the city limits.
We have a beautiful water tower that's going up
Well,
that
they could go up
that
there.
is gonna have a wonderful lease with it.
Might be permanent drone floating.
Yeah.
Towers of all our city, a nice home.
Court of ordinance signage for permitted uses. I know Annette and I have had this discussion several times about one particular business. Just, I think it just behooves not only the business, but our citizens to know what someplace is. So some sort of requirement that some signage needs to be up, I think is within our reasonable expectations for new businesses to come, as opposed to just having a bunch of blank buildings, even though they're doing business. I don't.
So this ties it to the certificate of occupancy. Before they can get that, they have to give us a sign or a signage plan. That has to be approved, and once that's approved, they have 180 days to put the sign or signage up.
And we have an ordinance that outlines the sign.
We do have sign, yeah. We just did that a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. So this just kind of tightens it up, and the language will be on the actual sign permit when they pull it, so they'll be getting hit from both sides with the information.
Did we reach out to this business to see
What
if they
the-
had a plan?
I've asked, and she says she was going to submit it, and we've never received it.
That's Lexi's dirt golf cart track.
Oh, I'm getting a sign. I'm gonna have a sign, don't you worry.
I'll open it up with you.
They'll go over all the houses.
Track sign.
So anyway, this will go before planning and zoning Monday, and then come back to you as a recommendation Tuesday. If you like the recommendation, I'll have everything set out there to set the public hearing, and we can move.
Sounds good.
Good, I'm good with that.
Oh, I just have a question. So how does this affect this business or businesses that don't currently?
It's kind of one of those, we didn't have the rule, our
So-
recommendation is still that they get a sign, but
Out of luck for now, but.
we're not gonna be able to go, hey, our ordinance says now,
Okay,
so.
Really?
got it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I'm from the marketing side of things and I just don't understand not having a sign for your business.
Some history.
Commercial of some sort.
Yeah,
I
but that's-
wouldn't, but-
But that's okay, that's,
But I will reach out to her and let her know.
Yeah, but it'd take care of it for going forward. So
Right.
you don't have a snowball problem.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why you would.
And what about businesses that are being leased, like in the strip mall areas, or because they kind of tend to go in and out often, or it can, they
They're
can.
still going to
How
have
does
to pull
that-
a sign permit to put a new
Okay.
sign up, so that'll give them that 180-day window.
Okay.
I would assume whoever owns the strip mall's gonna want.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be a condition of their lease.
Yeah.
thanks, Lexi. Tall grass and weed ordinance, this is mine. There's been some discussion about natural grasses, programs being done at businesses or at homes. And the question is, why do they get to not have the problem of if they're over 10 inches, a property owner has grass over 10 inches, and they get a notice from the city that if they don't mow it, the city will mow it for them and bill them for it. My thoughts on this are if someone is intentionally putting in, again, I don't have all the parameters about native landscape and what's involved. But I don't want to hinder somebody who is looking to do that for a purpose with reason and with effort, as opposed to, I'm just not gonna cut my grass. Those are my parameters. And I would like to get this a little more in tune with how that comes off.
You make them have a landscape plan.
Well, I think this is a great segue to what's coming up.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so what they're gonna do is kind of give us a high level view, because what he talks about tonight, back to planning and zoning, and then comes back to you all. So this is kind of like a precursor of what they're working on, and probably gonna try to finalize Monday, I'm assuming.
Are you guys gonna get done with your meeting right before ours? Is that how it's
It'll be
gonna be?
big
So Tuesday will come in, you guys will be.
Yeah,
we're
we're
gonna-
gonna, we'll pull up the sleeping bag. Get out of there, yeah.
You guys will be walking out, we're like, hey, how's it going?
Get along.
It will.
Fist bumps and keep moving.
Yeah.
So that's why it's on here for discussion. I guess before they present, does anyone have questions, thoughts, feelings about this type of discussion? Justin, you have something.
I'm just not a fan of the no mow May or whatever they wanna call it.
Yeah.
That is now turning into
No
no
more summer?
mow June, no
No
mow
more summer.
July.
So I wanted to, the thing I like about it is it puts some parameters around what we can, can't do it. Right now, we don't have anything. Other than if it grows over, you're gonna get fined, we're gonna come cut your grass. What I like about it is that it's gonna put some parameters around what we can do, what we can't do. We've got some height limits in it. We've got some, cutoffs for borders.
Safety for site.
There's an
I think
application
it's-
process that you have to go through, that's
It
what I like
creates a
about
clear
it.
dissemination because this doesn't take in consideration people having a plan that is approved, that is site surveyed, that this just is your typical, you have a yard and you gotta do something with it. It doesn't break it apart to say you have a plan, like we'll share here. So people have the ability in this dynamics here to kind of skirt around the verbiage.
Yeah.
They do,
I'm just doing natural.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we're open to our, whatever discussion we're gonna have. So I will just turn it over to you guys and give us these are what, this is why, kind of very highlighted, because I know you're gonna get more into detail with the planning and zoning. So we're looking at what are the parameters, or how does this happen? And so kind of understand it, so when you guys come back to us, we go, yeah, we kind of get that, so.
This is awareness, so
Yes.
we're really, no pun intended, planting the seed for you guys.
Well,
Yeah, it's full of bad dad jokes. So, but where this started is that being on P and Z, we know that there's that gray area. So it's trying to create structure and minimize, as we talked to Jeff, when Jeff was at one of our meetings, minimize
That
the.
birds.
Well, Jeff Bird, but then,
Buxton.
yeah, both Jeffs were at separate meetings.
Yeah.
I'm the one that-
But we had Jeff Bird just recently at ours this week. But it's helping to create structure and minimize the fear factor of a city to say, how do we have something that is planned versus being a police force and being on the negative side of it? And so it's also then looking at it from a true conservationalist standpoint and the age bracket of our residents. We're appealing to what they're asking for, especially on the surface.
I'll just jump in. My name's Eric Gould. I'm
Eric,
part of the native landscape consultant. The last 7 years. So, this is, you know, as a good professor always does, when I dived into I noticed some continuities that, meet some of those needs of your residents, especially along the corridors that were, you know, sort of identified as areas that could be beautified, right? And you guys talked about a little bit of that today already with the trail. Problems with lawns is we're just sort of scrolling. I can talk that fast, but it's.
Just let me know.
So the idea is that we do want to set up and apply prep, site prep, plant and grow those things. And there's a lot of management, both from the residents part as well. And the goal is to really connect all of those networks. The problem with lawns is that we have 4 million acres of turf grass in the United States. It is the largest non-edible crop in the United States. And we put nutrients into it. They're called pesticides, herbicides, but as a fried chicken to crispy chicken, and that's called greenwashing. And so why this matters is that the community, and so for each one of you, I think, have different sort of stake in this in terms of water and maintenance costs, especially if parks are part of this, mowing is part of this. You'll see in one of the case studies, you can save tens of thousands of dollars just in mowing. Seasonal curb appeal, of course, and I happen to love even the look of it in winter. It actually provides a lot of like structural integrity and interest. It also provides that space for our wildlife. And then so that goes into your eco leadership and then in environment, soil restoration, stormwater reduction. If you didn't know this, like if you watch water pass across turf grass, it actually doesn't absorb much water past about the first 2 inches, whereas prairie grass will absorb up 13 inches of water. So it's extremely important. And that's one of the reasons why I pulled up the Louisville in Texas. There are 70 acres that were converted and eventually 100 acres. You can see that there were some initial costs and they were to reduce those costs from $32,000 to $4,000 immediately that first year. So, you know, basically net savings that first year was 70, just in the conversion of some of those green spaces that were normally turf grass into native vegetation. So beyond that, if you scroll down, this was the estimated cost on 100 acres. You can see your 10-year savings just in maintenance of over $250,000. And then most importantly, that irrigation, pesticide reduction of all of those nutrients in our environment. And so, yeah, I've been working with a client here in town, one of your residents, well, partial residents. So they live in the county and then own a piece of property that was annexed pretty recently. So part of that plan, then it connects all of these things together. So the natives, along the way, you have the Octans property, a retention basin, and that sort of green space that is just, you know, it's being mowed, that actually would connect residents to some of the more lively businesses that seem to be attractions to your community. I understand that there is a hotel that's going in just east of that as well. And then if those are all things that connect one another together, it just seems like. So I've identified these areas. Some of this is about sort of one, we want to open this up to residents and provide them with a plan and sort of a structural organization and application process to do it in their properties. I also sort of entertaining the idea that Peosta get on board with this as well and sink us some money into some of those spaces. Cox Springs is supposed to be the sort of visible corridor, inviting people into your community. So here's some of what would be allowed, 150 square foot minimum. And I'm taking a lot of this just from the mowing of monarchs, so they have pocket prairies that are pretty successful. Up to 75% yard conversion to native vegetation and a no limit. The bee-friendly lawn, which would be 8 inches high. This would get so there's some like gray area there in terms of like what neighbors would say about like, well, that what is that? And so that would have to be an established vegetation. There are mowing easements, 5-foot mowed borders, 30-foot corner borders, setbacks and approved species and educational signage. And we're looking at some height restrictions of 36 to 48 inches. There's a good example of a real short prairie on the right, and then those bee lawns. Basically, your clovers, your creeping thymes, you put partridge pea in there, and there are other species that are very low growing. Again, it's all pollinator friendly. Here's the process that you're really going through, like making sure you have a map, a sketch, the selection of native species. Hopefully you're either working with monarchs or someone like myself. The removing of the turf through either herbicide applications, plow, whatever, you scrape it off. There's some examples here. And so in this first example, this is from Prairie Moon Nursery, which is a very reputable up in Minnesota. So you see year one herbicide, application. Those are 3 applications. I call this like ethical application of herbicides because you actually only have to do it those 3-4 times, and that will kill off everything, and it provides that, sort of an adequate space for those natives to grow. Year 2 is just mow. So they would have to know that you planted, unlike conventional landscape, you would be wanting to see something, but you actually just want to sit and mow it to about 8 to 10 inches. Every time it gets up about over a foot, you mow it. You keep doing that for the first year. Then the third year, you let it kind of spring up, and it springs. You get a lot of great species that pop up, and then typically you would either burn it, mow, thatch, or have goats come in and eat it, which I've done all of those things. And in year 4, you get really, year 4 or 5 and 6, and people that have larger plots like myself, I can attest that every year is a little bit different. I see, wild geraniums pop up where I never saw them. Oh, look, there's a Jacob's ladder. Oh, look, asters coming up over here where I never saw before. That's kind of the beautiful part. This is just like I pull land records and property lines before I get started. This is just a client of mine, Dave Kessler in Dubuque on Mount Carmel Road. The second is, sort of a plant selection and, a sketch of what he's going to be doing. And then the next slide is my own house where, I had, used a sod cutter, and I went ahead and cut all my paths. Then I brought a company in to mow it all, like scrape it all off, remove it. And then that's my 3rd year bloom. It looks pretty similar to that right now. It's getting close to all that bergamot popping. And then some resources that I think are really important. Now, this is part of the educational component, and that's also about, police officers not showing up at your house because they're growing marijuana out there. It happened. So this is the part where it's like, you want to let people to know what you're doing and make it an outward conversations. And when you have these conversations, an open way to not, you're doing something bad. I don't demonize my neighbors because they have a lawn and I have something different. But when they ask questions, I give them a lot of information. Sometimes been accused of being too educated. So Prairie in Progress, Monarch Way Station, there's a variety of things. But what I end on is that this is all Peosta's potential for meeting the residents where their needs are. I see a growing population, and and tell me like, you have this huge yard, if you wanted help, you shouldn't have had kids. And so there is like a growing population of young people that don't want to care for those lawns. They don't want to have to pour the money into them. They don't want $200 a month in just herbicides, pesticides and everything else. And it just gives them a really applicable way of managing their properties. And they're young families too, right? So they're busy. So, you know, as an action item, a lot of these things would be, you know, the Peosta Forward Initiative being affixed to a lot of this signage that would help residents know that not only is it something that they're a part of, but it's actually. Oh, and it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We're not going to become mowing the monarchs. We're not on this. We're not giving them any rebates, none of that. The highest cost would be the signage itself, which I think at $8 a piece or $10 a piece. I don't suspect you're going to get 1,000 people. It's like rushing to do this right away.
Well, I'm gonna have a new sign ordinance in place, so.
Yeah. So I saw that. For me, I think this is just an awesome opportunity that kind of segued from me coming here originally just to propose and get the ball rolling with their project. And I feel really fortunate to be here and be able to help steer and guide this for your city. So that's.
Thank you. Thank you. The structure, thank you Eric, for that. And the structure part of it, so Monday I met with, we had our gathering of our advisory group and Jeff Bird's location there, Dartford, because it wasn't an official city meeting, so we didn't have to worry about that.
I had a train.
Yeah. So Jeff was there and then Caitlin with Morning Marks was there. And so getting to understand, and even Jeff saying, I need to improve mine because I was sold the design, but it wasn't the native plants. And now I need to do some update on that to make it more native, make it that colorful that I wanted, but I didn't get that because I got someone that sold me something, they retired, didn't tell me the upkeep and how to do that year 1, 2, 3, and so on.
He had some problems too. He had some drought years.
Yeah, and that was, so.
I will say, drought years don't.
Really?
With natives.
Because they go so deep so fast.
They're drought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my property is just east of Kelly Oaks, right on Redbird Lane, and so we have natives that are there too. And we did the Moines Monarchs plug program, didn't even know that there's another level of, that you can buy seed from them by using someone like Eric or so on, that we would be in our strategic plan showing you need to have someone come with a plan. And you can, if you don't mind, just show real quick that next tab up.
That application.
On the second investment?
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
There you go. So what we learned through that Fitchburg, which is up in the Madison area, Louisville outside of the Dallas suburb area, and then even City of Ames, because of the pension plans, they have structure to it. And so they had an actual calling out of what it is, how you go through the process. But then they didn't have where it was a really detailed, all of them collectively didn't have where you had, here's the plan, here's the application process, here's an approval. And then it would be, it'd have to be approved and kept up. And so that's what we were wanting to propose to say, this is a structured plan and it's education and it's establishing a network, like Leanne, to have to where you have someone that wants to have something structured and we create that community involvement where you have this group of individuals that helps the new ones grow in this, truly grow. And so it's building that network in the community.
Well, I want to thank you for all the work that you guys have done, because I
Pretty
mean, this
cool.
just really, you came before us, you said you were going to do this, and I thought, okay, we'll see what happens, and then 2 weeks later, we have things ready, and we want to come before council, so I do appreciate putting this together.
I think there's possibilities here for city property too. We've talked about Kelly Oaks, we gotta get things established, but we want a lot of native plantings and things like that. At some point, not have to mow it all, so we don't have so many acres to mow.
And then that lot
And,
B, right
yeah,
behind Dartford, that whole
Right,
area.
that whole water shed, as long as we can have a trail or something through it that people can walk, cause I mean, and I'm sure that's easy to design in, but we could reduce our mowing and have something that looks attractive and benefit to it.
And I don't think you should discount the volunteerism that can occur, because a true conservationalist, you know, I haven't heard Leanne talk at all, but you know, Eric's extremely passionate about this, not just it never, and Caitlin, you know, if we heard Caitlin speak last year, but you know, it's about what is good for the soil, but also the community, and also what it brings to the community, you know, and we're bringing so much more life, literal life to the community, and it helps enrich that soil in those areas too. And so it's truly creating a sustainable program, a legacy program that will continue.
There's also the educational part about it. Think about the schools that could take advantage of that, and the trails, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, and be able to use that also as part of the living classroom.
Yep.
So.
My only question, and it's from a point of ignorance, but you said brings in the wildlife. So I'm seeing mice, rodents. What do you see, especially in small planting? I mean, how's that gonna change the dynamic if you have one neighbor with a 1/4 acre lot and it's mowed grass? I don't know. What do you see?
You have.
Do you? What do you
lives
have?
right next door to me. She's got all kinds of stuff growing.
What
I have a
do you,
motor
what's
grass.
the,
I don't have.
define the
issues.
wildlife thing? What are
I mean,
we
we
talking
also have
about
corn
living
in
there?
our backyard.
It's not honey badgers and bears, no way.
My problem is that, so they pass right by all of those Lowe's flowers.
And they eat yours?
And they-
Yeah, cause yours tastes better.
And guess what? All the dogs too. All the dogs that run that circle, because I live in Barony Woods.
They want it.
And they go right in there
Stop
and
it,
they eat
no.
all the sweet grass and they lay down and they wanna hang out. And do you see them over in the neighbor's yard eating that grass?
But you don't.
Your main
because it-
part-
But I don't care.
Your main part's your pollinators, you're gonna get your bees,
So what about
the
bees and
butterflies
birds and
that we don't see very
butterflies?
much anymore.
I have to share, last night, I went outside. Water fountain, turn that on. The whole prairie was just lit up with fire.
With fireflies,
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
Mine was
oh,
going crazy.
my
last night.
wife and I just sat out there, it was like a fireworks show.
Beautiful.
It was amazing. So I mean, this is the kind of thing that it's a little more, it's magical. And you look on both ways.
Birds,
Did
lovebirds.
you see any of that over in my neighbor's yard? No.
Yeah,
And so it's just,
we don't need birds.
What?
We're having many problems with birds around here.
They can come to my place and
The
that.
bees help pollinate too, I mean.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep, that's exactly.
Well, and we're seeing, you know, we've got the rusty, the rusty bumblebee, and that's becoming extinct. And I've actually seen 2 in my yard. That's amazing that we're bringing that back, and we need those bees.
And we'd wanna work with, you know, your daughter, I just found out through Caitlin, works with that tree equity program in Dubuque.
Yep.
And so we would keep moving forward on that to partner with those entities that we could help with tree programs in the community here and resources and ways that we could get grants as a community, as a city for those extra funds, but then also help possibly some of those residents that have larger areas like Eric, where you qualify as.
I'm a certified wildlife habitat. Because I have water, shelter, food source.
And you have how many acres there?
It's just, I mean, I have an 1.5 acres and I've converted a little over a 1/2 acre.
Okay. And what you guys are proposing here, what zoning is gonna be discussing is that there be a minimum amount of ground, 150
Yeah.
square or something.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, that's not
Polite to the neighbors.
You're trying to have parameters
And the
and
setback
mode
and
borders
all.
and setbacks, and that'll look, it'll look nice.
The design that he did with Octons over here, you know, where their property's right over just southeast of the Birds and Cox Springs intersection. I mean, it's beautiful because it's truly has mowed paths through there, setback. And so it, you know, it's from a safety standpoint, it's not long grasses up front and sidewalks would be, you know, you have to have 5 feet away, so you're not having these grasses, these natives fall where people are walking, so it's being strategic.
Well, does the city take care of those swamps?
Who finds us?
Right.
Why's it really gonna meet?
In the wet area,
On Cox Ridge.
Some of those areas.
that whole, that
We
basin.
take care of that.
Yeah, but
It's pretty tall.
if it goes over the minimum.
Are we being fined?
He's just saying, it's a big turtle wet,
Yes.
it's a.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But those could be converted, right? So like.
Having
there's
a lower
so much
trail.
garbage-
I mean-
Such garbage in there, like you got.
I would disagree with that. I like the right of way. I personally like the right of way maintained.
Clean.
Yeah,
Clean.
I do.
Well,
I
that's,
mean, it clears up the vision, it gives good visibility and stuff at intersections and such, so, I mean, I personally like the right of way. But like over there on Cox Springs, for example, next to Atkins, some of that stuff is just uncontrollable, cause actually, one of the residents over there has, their drain field, releases out into that ditch, so it's extremely wet. So that's why that doesn't get maintained, we can't control it.
But those are good area opportunities to put something in there that's a little better than. It leads into that retention basin. I mean, on a map, I mean, one of the first things I did for the Octans was I go back to the 1930s. And they came back from up in the air, and there's aerial photography you get from county. And you can get 1930s, 1950s, 40s, we were busy. Then the 60s and the 70s, and then it jumps to the 2000s, and there's just like satellite imagery, right? But what you could see, so it would be interesting to you guys, is like actually the water, and you see how water moved across the land at one point. And then everybody just kept building and just ignore like where those natural flows are. That never changed. So there are problems. I guarantee you could have, like, that was identified in 1930. And you can see it, right? Like everything leads into that retention basin. Everything goes back to like further east, down, upstream from that. You could slow that down significantly.
The biggest thing we wanna be able to focus on is really kind of 4 areas, put structure to it. Make sure there's a commitment between the community members and then obviously the city. If there's any showcased areas that the city could do, education, and then partnerships. Where it's working with other entities to help bring more opportunities here because there's all those secret sources of funding and programs to help residents bring.
Sorry.
Secret funding.
secret funding.
Good thing Stacy's gone.
Yeah. We're looking for secret funding.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys coming up and giving us the education.
Thank
And we'll look forward to something.
Yeah, mine.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Yeah. All right, maybe else, anything else?
Thanks, Jim.
You bet. See you next.
Yeah, see you next week.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
All right, so you.
I just forgot.